This video is intended to help create the website, blogs, Facebook, to come up with content to use. So start with my story. How did it all start? Back in 2010, I was working for a company out of Boca Raton. I was manager of a telemarketing room doing phone sales. I worked for a guy named Sean and a guy named Lou in Boca Raton, Florida. They're the ones that owned the call center. While working for them, they had started talking about opening up a doctor's office in Georgia, in Savannah, Georgia. They had already worked for another doctor's office or pain clinic. That's the nickname for where I worked and how I got in trouble. It was a pain clinic or a pill mill. They had worked for one in Boca Raton, Florida, somewhere. I forgot what it was called. Total Medical Express or something to that effect. They asked me if I would be interested in managing the operation in Savannah, Georgia, for the reason that I didn't have any strong drug addictions. I showed up to work on time every day, and I was pretty good with dealing with people. So they thought I'd be a good person to put in the location to run the day-to-day operations. They told me the reason was they knew I wasn't going to be using the pills if we started dispensing pills on site and things like that. So they offered me $10,000 a month to take the job. I told them I would take the job if I could bring my people with me, my girlfriend, my best friend. I didn't want to leave everybody and move to Georgia. That wasn't something I was willing to do. So they allowed me to offer my girlfriend a job as the receptionist. They allowed me to offer my friend a job as the triage, the guy that does your blood pressure, checks your urine, making sure you're not on anything before you see the doctor. So they agreed to all this. This was in 2010. Early 2011 is when things started moving into place, and they agreed to move us up there. Before the doctor's office was open, myself, Sean, my friend Costa, K-O-S-T-A, my friend Costa, and this other guy, Frankie, we were doing marketing. We were going around to other pain clinics. Basically, a pain clinic, most people that were coming down to the Florida pain clinics were driving from Kentucky, Ohio, really far away. So we were going to these pain clinics, and we were going to the pain clinics in Florida, and we were marketing to them. We would go to the patients that were at the pain clinic waiting outside or waiting in line, and we'd go to them and say, hey, next time you're going to go to the doctor, instead of driving all the way to Florida, why don't you try us out? We're opening an office in Savannah, Georgia, which is right off of the Interstate I-95. So it'd be shorter distance for you, and we'll give you a discount for your doctor visit, for your first discount, or for your first visit, you'll get it cheaper. So it was pretty easy to get patients that were interested in coming down because it was just a shorter amount of time for them. They didn't really care where they were going. They just wanted to get their prescriptions filled. So we were marketing to these people, and we did that for a couple of weeks, and then the office opened, and the first day it opened, there was a decent amount of clients, 20, 30 clients or something to that effect, that came in, saw the doctor. At that point, I moved up to Georgia, and now I was working directly out of the Savannah office. It was called East Health Center in Garden City, which is just on the outskirts of Savannah. It's inside of Savannah. It's like a little city inside Savannah called Garden City, East Health Center. The day-to-day patients were coming in. They were coming from all over the place, Kentucky and Ohio, had patients from Connecticut. That should have been where my suspicion was raised, but every patient that came through the door had a MRI, basically like a CAT scan or an MRI showing that there was something wrong with them. that they got showing that their discs were out of place, they were in pain. So we would call the place that did the MRI to verify that that MRI really belonged to that patient and make sure the patient didn't use like Photoshop or change it or using somebody else's. And once in a while we would catch patients that were trying to get through with a shady MRI, and we would discharge them. We wouldn't let them see the doctor, and they weren't ever allowed to come back. Other patients were verified, and they showed they had legitimate pain. They were getting prescriptions filled. They've been getting prescriptions filled for the last year or 6 months or whatever from other doctors. So our doctor, Dr. Azmat, A-Z-M-A-T, was filling their prescriptions. He was writing most of them lesser amounts than what they were used to getting because he wanted to start them on something lower than what they were getting, just to show that he wasn't just writing heavy prescriptions. He only worked there for 2 weeks because the owner, Sean, and Al were getting a lot of complaints that the patients weren't happy because they weren't getting the normal amount of prescriptions filled. So they ended up firing Dr. Azmat, and they hired another doctor by the name of Dr. Kenneth Gossett, G-O-S-S-E-T-T, Kenneth Gossett. Well, Dr. Gossett came in, and he wasn't writing that much different. He was verifying patients, and if he didn't see that they were in enough pain, he would discharge them, or he would write them a prescription for like ibuprofen when the patient was there trying to get, you know, roxicodone, Percocet, what else? You know, painkillers, stuff that people were using to get high. They would smoke them, crush them, snort them. You know, we don't know what they were doing with them once they left, but we assumed, you know, you had an idea. But they had valid MRIs, so it definitely wasn't my job to tell the person, hey, you don't qualify because you look like you're going to go smoke your drugs. You know, there's no way for me to know what the patient was going to do with them. My job was to make sure the day-to-day operations were running smooth, patients were coming in, paperwork was in order, goes to the doctor would verify it, write a prescription. We'd make copies of the prescription, put it in the patient's file. Then the patient would have to go to a pharmacy to get their prescriptions filled. Well, a lot of pharmacies wouldn't fill for these patients, which started raising suspicion because the pharmacies were getting a little nervous. They were afraid that they were going to get in trouble for filling these prescriptions for patients that were coming so far out of state to see a doctor. They were wondering, why are these patients going out of state to see doctors when they could just go to a doctor in their own area, which is valid. I decided not to really care because I felt like it wasn't my job to pay attention to that, so I didn't really think I was doing anything wrong at that point. Well, this went on for a couple of months, January, February, March, April. I was also working at another pain clinic that we had opened up in Atlanta, Georgia. I went up there to train the people that were working there how to run the office the way we were running our office in Savannah, Georgia. Well, in May, one morning, my girlfriend and best friend still worked at the one in Savannah, and every morning I would talk to my girlfriend on the phone on her way to work. And I couldn't get her on the phone. She wasn't answering the phone, kept calling, no answer, no answer, called the office, no answer. Then the owner, Sean, called me and said he couldn't log in. We had an online camera system where you could log in and see the cameras from any internet connection. He couldn't log into the cameras, thought something was up, so we couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I decided to call the hamburger place that was right next door. It's called Fatso's Hamburger. We knew the guy Tony that owned it. So I called Tony and told him, hey Tony, this is Dan, the manager over there at East Health Center. Is anybody there? And he's like, man, I don't know where you're at, but there are cop cars, feds, DEA, sheriff, everybody was there. They had the place shut down. Everybody was in handcuffs. So that's when I found out Shelley and Constantine had been arrested. I hadn't heard anything yet. I didn't know what to do. I was up in Atlanta, started freaking out. I went back to my hotel, packed everything up. I had a little bit of marijuana on me, and I decided to keep it. I should have threw it away. When I say a little bit, I mean a little bit, like less than an eighth of marijuana, enough for just me for a little bit here and there. Well, so I got in the car, I went back to the pain clinic, in Georgia to tell them I was, or the one in Atlanta to tell them I was leaving. And while I was sitting in the parking lot, I was in a rental Camaro, and I heard my name called, "Hey, Dan." And I looked over, and when I answered, "Yeah," all of a sudden, marshals came out of everywhere, U.S. Marshals, DE agents that had their guns pointed at me. "Get out of the car, get out of the car." I was freaking out, got out of the car, told me there's a warrant for your arrest out of Savannah, Georgia, blah, 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 for, they didn't say what at that point. They just said attempt or distribution with an attempt to, or distribution attempt to sale or something like that. Possession with attempt to sale, that's what it was. Possession of a Schedule II narcotic with attempt to sell it. So I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Da, 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 da. So they arrested me. They searched my car. They went through my stuff. They found a little bit of weed in the car. They charged me with the weed. But what was shitty is they found a pill on the ground, and they tried to say that I dropped it. They didn't know they were at a pain clinic. They just knew they were looking for me and heard that was the location I was in. I don't know how they got the address, if they GPS my phone, whatever. So they're telling me, "We saw you throw that pill on the ground. We saw you throw that pill on the ground." And I'm like, "I didn't throw a pill on the ground. You guys are out of your fucking mind. I didn't throw a pill on the ground." So they said, "Well, why is this pill sitting here?" I said, "You're at a pain clinic. Patients are coming and going all day long." And that's when they said, "We're at a pain clinic." So I was like, "Yeah, there's a million patients coming and going out of here. Anybody could have dropped that." So they ended up charging me with that pill. They charged me with possession of that one freaking pill. That was picked up on the state charge. That wasn't picked up by the feds. That was a separate state charge, a county charge out of Gwinnett, which is right outside of Atlanta, Gwinnett County. So they arrest me. They bring me to Gwinnett County Jail. I sit in jail for a couple days. My girlfriend's trying to bond me out. My bond wasn't that much, but whoever bonds you out, unless they're paying the total amount, if you're paying just the 10% bond, which most bonds you can put down 10% to a bondsman, and he'll bond you out. They wanted somebody with a local, or they wanted somebody with a Georgia state driver's license or an ID that was signing my bond. Well, me and Shelly are all from Florida, so they weren't allowing her to do it. So Dr. Gossett, his wife, did my bond. She actually signed, I'm sorry, she gave the money to Shelly, and our friend Candace and her boyfriend came and bonded me out of jail. So once they bonded me out, then they paid my bond for Gwinnett County. As soon as my bond was paid in Gwinnett County transferred me to Savannah, Georgia by transport vehicles, like the cop car, and I was handcuffed and shackled. I was in the cop car. It was like a 6-hour drive. It was horrible. I was in there with 2 other guys, no room. They let us stop and use the bathroom once. It was just a horrible ride. I got to Savannah. Savannah is where I had the charge from feds, which at this point feds hadn't picked it up yet. It was still just a state charge. That was for they told me I was charged with possession with intent to distribute. So I didn't know what they were talking about because they hadn't told me what the evidence was against me yet, but that was my charge. So there, you can't bond out until you see a judge. If you have a felony in Savannah, you don't get a bond automatically until you see a judge. So it took about a day, maybe 3 days. I finally saw the judge, gave me a bond. Shelly, Candace, and Candace's boyfriend, because they were Candace's boyfriend was the guy that had the local ID. They came and bonded me out. I was out on bond. The feds were talking to me. They wanted to know what my involvement was, and I was telling them we weren't doing anything illegal, and they were getting pissed off because I wasn't helping them, and I didn't really know what they wanted to say. I really thought at this point it's all a big misunderstanding. I'll explain my side of the story, and they're going to let me go. So that wasn't the case at all. The Fed just kept drilling, said we're going to charge you with conspiracy, and I didn't even know what that meant. I was like, whatever, I didn't do anything wrong. You didn't catch me with anything. But they did have me on tape, on undercover video. We had a guy come in once before we moved to the location in Gwinnett County. We were looking to get an office, and we had a guy come in that said he was a building owner, and he was potentially going to lease us space to open up a new office. He wanted to see our operation here. So he came in, I was showing him around. I'm going to try to get the video from that because I actually got that surveillance video at home. I'll try to get that posted up here for you guys to see it. But he was asking questions like, hey, can I see your doctor? Is any way your doctor will write me a prescription? And told him no, not without a valid MRI. He said he didn't have an MRI, so I said there's no way the doctor's going to write you anything. Well, he kept going back and forth, begging, kept telling him no, no, no. So as we were going through the office, I introduced him to the doctor, and he pretty much asked the doctor the same question, Dr. Gossett. Dr. Gossett said, I can't do anything for you if you don't have a valid MRI, but if you go get an MRI and it shows there's something wrong with you, I'd be more than happy to take care of you. So the guy didn't want to do that. So now we're finishing up, and he's like, man, I hurt my back playing golf and this and that. Well, a few days prior to that, we were cleaning out one of the patient rooms after the doctor had examined one of the patients, and we found there was a little bag with a couple of pills in it. It looks like maybe a patient had dropped it. So we had stuck it up in a bottle and put it on in the medicine cabinet up there. So when the guy said that and told me that it hurt his back, I asked him what he normally takes. He told me he takes, I forgot what he said, roxicodone or something. So I told him, I've got a couple here that you can just have. And he's like, how much do you want for them? And I said, well, I'm not selling them to you. We don't, I don't sell pills, but you can just have them. I said, meet me outside the parking lot. I don't want to do it inside because it looks weird. So I went out in the parking lot, gave him the pills. He took them, said thanks, drove off. Well, he was an undercover DEA agent who, at that point, then he didn't charge me at that point. It was, later on, once I got in trouble, I found out that's how they charged me with the possession, and they put intent to distribute or intent to sell or whatever. I didn't try to sell them. Clearly on tape, you'll see I didn't try to sell them. But that's the only thing they had me red-handed with. Everything else was hearsay. They said we were running an illegal operation, but yet they never once said what was illegal about it. So I don't know, even through the whole process, this was 2011, they didn't even indict us. I got offered a plea before I even got indicted. They offered me a plea of 60 months max. That's the most time they could have given me, so it was a 60-month cap. They offered me a plea, pre-indictment plea. I turned it down because I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. They offered me that a plea. At that point, I had a federally appointed attorney to me, and I decided I wanted to hire a real attorney because I felt like maybe a real attorney could get me something different. So I fired him. I hired another attorney named Rob Nye, N-Y-E, out of Savannah, Georgia. Hired Rob Nye. He told me, let's turn down this plea right now, and if they do indict you, more than likely they'll offer you the same plea again later on. But let's wait till we see what the evidence they got against you. So this was 2011 still, when they offered me the pre-indictment plea, and I turned it down. 2012, nothing. 2014, or the end of 2013. Was it the end of 2013? I think it was the end of 2000. I'm bad with time frame, guys. I apologize. End of 2013 or early 2014. All of a sudden, one morning, me and my girlfriend were living at home. I'm working for a company. Everything's going fine. She's got her cosmetology license. She's cutting hair. We're living a normal life. Living in a little townhouse. Got our dogs. Kind of forgot about this. We haven't heard anything in so long. Just kind of thought it was dead. Heard the gate rattle in the morning. It's like, what the hell was that? So we got up. I walked over to the balcony. I lived in a townhouse, 2-story townhouse. And I'm looking out the balcony, and I thought it was the cat jumping up on the gate because we have a privacy gate around the townhouse. And I don't see anything. And then I hear a knock on the door. And I'm looking down, and I see this guy lean back and look up at me, and I can see U.S. Marshals on his jacket. And when he sees me, he just opens the door and says, U.S. Marshals coming in, coming in. And I start screaming Shelly's name. Shelly Morford, Shelly Morford. And I'm like, what the fuck? Shelly's in the shower. I'm in my boxers. I'm going downstairs. As I get halfway down the stairs, they're just swarming in one after another. I don't remember how many, 10, 15 guys. They all got automatic weapons and guns pointed at my dog. We're talking like a chihuahua, not even like a real dog, like a chihuahua. And my cats are freaking out. We're looking for Shelly Morford. This female went upstairs, got Shelly out of the shower, asked who I was. I said, my name's Daniel Wise. I said, well, we got a warrant for your arrest out of Savannah, Georgia. And that's when I knew what it was about. I was like, motherfucker. So put me in handcuffs, put me downstairs, brought Shelly down, and Shelly was a champ. She walked by, she's like, don't say nothing to him. She just walked, they took her outside, put her on the patio, and she's never been in trouble before. Little things here and there, speeding ticket once in a while. She's never been arrested, never been in handcuffs. So this is her first time in any of that. So they tell me, we've been looking for you. You've been on the run. You've been in hiding and all this. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I spoke to you guys. You knew my address. I went down and spoke to the grand jury, testified in front of the grand jury with the same address. So how do you not know where I'm at? So at that point, they had us arrested because we were officially indicted. And it was like a 52 count indictment. It was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous indictment. And I'll put all that on here, the PSI and all that shit. I'll upload all that to the website. All that stuff is on there. So I'm just sitting in the car, and they got me and Shelly in an SUV. We're in handcuffs to bring us out. All my neighbors are standing out looking at us like, who the fuck are these guys? Like Bonnie and Clyde. So we get in the car, and they take us to the federal building in Palm Beach County for a bond hearing, immediately bringing us to a bond hearing. And the agent in the car is telling us that the feds or the agents out of Florida are recommending that they give Shelly bond. But they're recommending that they deny my bond because I'm a flight risk because they haven't been able to find me. Like, how the fuck am I a flight risk? So I don't even know what to make of that. So we get there. They won't let me use the phone yet. I haven't been able to call my attorney to tell him I got indicted. So he has no idea any of this happened. They immediately bring us in, put us in a holding cell. They let me meet a public defender just to talk to right there on the spot. And I tell him, I'm like, look, they're trying to deny my bond. They're saying I'm a flight risk. Here's the story. They know where I live. I testified in front of the grand jury. They're supposed to pay me money for testifying in front of the grand jury. And when you testify in front of the grand jury, when you testify to the grand jury, that's part of when the grand jury decides whether or not to come back with a verdict to indict you. So that's not for trial or anything. That's just to decide whether or not they can build a case to indict you. So the attorney I had before I paid for an attorney convinced me it was in my best interest to testify in front of the grand jury. So after I testified in the grand jury, that's when they offered me the pre-indictment plea of 60 months. And I was like, you could shove that plea up your ass, because I was still in the frame of mind that I'm not going to prison, that this is bullshit. I didn't do anything to deserve to go to prison, so I said no. So at that point, all deals off the table. They indicted us. They came in, fucking freaked us out, scared my neighbors, brought us in. So now I'm talking to this attorney, telling them they know where I live. They're just pissed off that I pulled back out of the deal and I'm no longer working with them. They're just doing this. They don't want me to get out. They want me to sit in county the whole time, blah, 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 blah. So he said, look, we're going to go in front of the judge. If we ask him for bond right now, if he denies it, we can't go back in front of him and ask him for bond. You're going to sit here till whatever happens, trial, whatever happens, you're going to sit there till that day. But we can't ask him for a continuance to extend your bond hearing like a week. So if we do that, then I can talk to your attorney. I can get all the proof, show they do know where you live, blah, 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 blah. So I said, fuck it, I guess that's what we got to do. So my bond hearing, we went up there. That's what they asked. Shelly got bond that day. She didn't even get changed out of her clothes or nothing. They let her go home. I don't even think she really got put in handcuffs, maybe for a little while, but she was out of there that day. They sent me to the county jail in West Palm Beach, which is called Gun Club. I went to Gun Club. I was there about a week. They brought me back for my bond hearing a week later. Now at this point, I've spoken to my attorney. I got all the proof that they did know where I was, and I wasn't a flight risk, and I've never been a flight risk. I've been at the same address the whole time from 2011 until this date. So I haven't moved around. I had the same job, whatever. All that stuff was legit. So they brought it in front of the judge. The actual DEA agent that was leading the case flew from Savannah, Georgia to be there to try to get the judge to deny me bond. The judge was really cool. He said, look, I don't see any reason. I had a ton of people. All my friends were there. My one friend put up a surety bond again. He had put up like I forget what it was. He had like an annuity or a mutual fund or something. He put on the line that if I took off and it escaped or whatever, they'd go after that. Had a bunch of people that came and put signature bonds up. They signed saying they'd be personally responsible if I disappeared. So even though the DEA agent was there trying to get me, fucked off and stay in there, they gave me bonds, so I got to go home that day. I had to go back to Gun Club. They processed me out, and I left later on that night. They picked me up. So I was out from that point until I self-surrendered in September 23rd, 2014. I was out that entire time, so about a year. I was out on bond or more. Never got in trouble, never pissed dirty, never did anything I wasn't supposed to do, whatever. So this whole time we're fighting it. we're all fighting it together. No one's taken a plea yet, except for 2 people. Dr. Gossett took a plea, and Costa had taken a plea at this point. Nobody else took a plea. We were all like, let's go to trial. We can win this. They don't have nothing against us saying that we're doing what they're saying that we did. We didn't break any laws in Georgia. They're not telling us what laws we broke. They just said, we're running an illegal doctor's office, but they still haven't told us what was illegal about it. So we're fighting. A couple of months before trial. Trial was the end of August, or is it early? Is it the end of August or early September 2014 was trial. So right before trial, at this point my attorney's feeling confident. We've got the owners are all willing to fight this. They're all willing to go to trial, so we're going to be behind them. They're going to be in the front line of defense. So we're going to be behind them because they're the head targets. And as long as they're fighting, it gives us a better chance to fight. So we were willing to fight it. Like a week before trial, 2 weeks before trial, something like that, my attorney calls me and says, we got a problem. All of a sudden, people started taking pleas. Sean took a plea. Frankie took a plea. All the head guys were taking pleas. So I was like, son of a gun. So called Shelly. Told her, try to see if you still got a plea on the table, because if you don't take a plea on this and you go to trial, if you go to trial, anybody that took a plea, part of their plea agreement is they have to testify against you. So the last thing I wanted was everybody to testify against Shelly. So Shelly took a plea. They gave her it's called imprisonment of a felony. Imprisonment, basically, it's like a retarded conspiracy charge. They're basically saying that she probably had an idea that something was going on and she didn't report it. They're not saying that she knew exactly what was going on, but they said she had an idea that there might have been something shady, but she didn't tell anybody. So imprisonment of a felony was the charge they gave Shelly. So I'm still thinking, we're no longer are we going to fight this. I don't have a plea on the table at this point, so my attorney had to go to the U.S. the U.S. attorney to ask him to offer me a plea. And at first, like, why should we give him a plea? This and that. So I had to fly down there. They had to talk to me. I had to convince them that I was worthy of a plea. Blah 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 blah. And they agreed to give me the plea of a cap of 60 months. And part of my plea was I had to cooperate and I had to testify, which was scary because it was just scary. I didn't really know what I was going to be testifying against. So I agreed to do all of this in order to save my own ass, basically. But I was still thinking I could get probation because my plea agreement was 0 to 60. Best case scenario, probation. Worst case scenario, 60 months. That was the most they could give me under this plea agreement. So I'm thinking Shelly's going to get probation too, because hers was 0 to 36 months. So I'm like, all right, Shelly's going to get probation. Her sentencing date was before mine, like a month before mine. So we went to hers, and I'm like, all right, she'll get probation. No, this will be, this will kind of let us know what everybody else needs to expect. So I went to hers, and the freaking judge gave her 13 months. I mean, gave her less than what he could have gave her. Could have gave her 36, but when he gave her 13 months prison time, I was like, son of a bitch, I'm screwed. Because if they're giving her prison time, and all she did was answer the phone and didn't know shit. Like, on paper, she didn't know shit. They were even saying she didn't know shit, but they still gave her 13 months. I was like, man, the rest of us are getting hammered. I thought I was going to get 60 months. So I started freaking out and didn't know what to do, started, preparing. That's when that first video came out. That's when I realized that, like, this shit is out of fucking control. So everybody else started going to court, and they were all getting, 40 months, 46 months, 50 months. One guy got like 50-something months because he was an idiot. This guy, Al, one of the owners, Al LaFrancois. And if you look up the case, if you look up Dr. Asmat, Savannah, Georgia, you'll see the whole DEA, like, freaking post about it in the news article. Al LaFrancois, Adelard LaFrancois. He got the same plea offer I did, but at the time of his sentencing, he started freaking out and backing out and saying, oh, I didn't know that. So they took away his acceptance of responsibility and gave him a little bit more time. They could have given him 60 months. I think they gave him like 50-something months. So I went to court, got letters, brought friends with me. I went to my trial date and was praying to God that they were going to give me a better sentence. And they gave me 42 months. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. I didn't even not know what to feel. So they gave 42 months, and then right from there they take you to I got to self-surrender, so I didn't have to go. I didn't get locked up that day, but that same day I had to go do my PSR investigation, where they do the interview for your PSI or your PSR, pre-sentencing report, what they give to the judge later on when you go back. I'm sorry, at the time, I'm sorry, I messed up. Before I went to my sentencing, I went to my where I pled guilty of the charge. And when I pled guilty of the charge, at that point, I wasn't sentenced yet. I just accepted my plea of guilt, told them that I was guilty, blah, 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 blah. I accept the plea, didn't have to go to trial. That was what capped me at 60 months. I still didn't know what my sentence was going to be yet. Right after I did that, they brought me to probation, where I sat down with probation, interviewed me on my PSR. This is how Rdap comes into play. During that PSR interview, they asked me about my drug use, when's the last time I used drugs. I told them I've been using drugs the whole time, haven't stopped. Been smoking weed and drinking every day. Every day. 12 months prior to the indictment, to the day I got indicted, I had to show that I had some sort of drug use or alcohol use on a regular basis in order to qualify for Rdap once I got into prison. Rdap is the Residential Drug Addiction Program, which, if successfully completed, of 9 months, you get a year off of your prison term. So I had to make sure I specified that during the time of my PSR interview, which I did. So I did all of that. PSR came back like a couple weeks later. Then I got my sentencing date when I had to go back to court, stand in front of the judge. That's when he imposed my sentence. Brought friends with me. You know, family wrote letters, kids wrote letters, my daughters wrote letters. Tried to do the best I could, and the judge gave me 42 months. Then he gave me 30 days of self-surrender, and I had to get a surgery done on my arm. As you can see, I got this nasty little scar right here. I blew my tendon off of my bicep. My tendon went, or my bicep went this way, my tendon went that way. This happened a long time ago, before all of this even happened, on a mechanical bull ride, but I didn't get the surgery yet, and I was afraid if I went into prison, my arm was just going to keep getting weaker and weaker because I had no use of my bicep. As you can see, that bicep's, you know, a lot different than that one as far as the shape of it. So they gave me an additional couple weeks, so I got the surgery done. They let me heal up a little bit, and then I went into prison. So I self-surrendered September 23rd, 2014. It's crazy. So that's kind of my story of how it started. And then in prison, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I went to a low. I should have went to a camp. I had a detainer on me for an open charge. The thing I told you, I originally got arrested, and out of Savannah, they charged me with the possession with intent to sell. They had me on video for. Well, I went to court for that, and during my court hearing, I was cooperating with the feds. So I had the Fed case that I was cooperating with that hadn't been indicted on yet. Then in this case that they had me on video, the state picked it up. So I was dealing directly with the state on that. Well, the state dropped the charges on the Fed's recommendation because I was cooperating. So the charges were dropped on that. But somehow when I turned myself in, it still had pending disposition. It showed that I never went to court. It showed that I had an open warrant because I had a failure to appear. So it took several months to get this fixed. A couple of days before I was supposed to start Rdap is when it actually got fixed. And you can't start Rdap if you have an open detainer either. So make sure all your detainers are fixed. Well, they found it. They found the mistake. And Savannah sent the proper paperwork in showing the disposition was closed and it was a null process and, you know, case closed, all that good shit. So I had an option at that point to either start Rdap 2 days later, or I could wait, get transferred to a camp and do Rdap in a camp, which meant, you know, you don't get the time off of Rdap until you finish the 9 months. So I was like, let's just do it now. I'm already here. I was at Coleman Low, Florida, which was a real easy place to be. The yard was open, tons of shit to do. So I went into Rdap there. Rdap's 9 months. If you guys want to know about Rdap, I'll put some content in there for Rdap as well. How to get into Rdap, what the qualifications are for Rdap, what to expect from Rdap, what I got out of Rdap. You know, my name is rdapdan for a reason. Rdap for me was great, even though it's a residential drug addiction program. It's got very little to do with drugs. It's got to do with your poor thinking, making adjustments to your thinking, how can you do things differently, taking responsibility for your own actions, understanding what your triggers are, and not just drug triggers, what your triggers are to cheating on your girlfriend, what your triggers are to breaking the law, identifying these things so you don't make the same mistakes, creating new habits. It's 9 months of intense treatment, man. I don't know how else to explain it other than spending a whole other video on it, which I probably should do. So I went through that. It was stressful, 9 months of my life, but I got a lot out of it. I talked about it a lot in most of my videos, and even outside in the real world, I tell people about it. I'm not ashamed of it. Right after I finished Rdap, I pretty much went home right after that. So I got a 42-month sentence. I served 13 months total in prison, and I have 11 months that I have to do in halfway house, which is part of my federal. The 11 months in halfway house is part of my 42-month prison sentence. So I'm on the federal halfway house now. I'm wearing a federal GPS ankle monitor. I'm not sure, whatever. It's made by a company called Blue Tag. They know where I am within 15 feet. And it's because I go home on the weekends in the halfway house. I go home for 48-hour passes, Friday to Sunday. That part's great. You get to go home, sleep in your own bed, eat food, just whatever you want to do. You can't drink, can't smoke, can't do anything illegal, obviously. But halfway house is crazy. I'm not a fan of the halfway house. If I wasn't going home on my weekend passes, I would hate it. It's just nothing to do. It's boring. I have a job. I'm at my job right now, actually. At the end of the day, I finished everything I got to do, so I thought I'd post this little video here. But halfway house is intense. You got to get a job if you want to go home on home passes. They drug test you all the time. You can't go home on home confinement until you have your 10% day comes up, which means whatever you're sentenced to. If you got 42 months, if 42 months was your actual sentence, the most time you can do in home confinement is 10% of that. So like 4 months roughly is how much time I can do on home confinement. So I got 11 months of halfway house. So I started in October. I won't go to home confinement until May. And then from May to September, I'll be at home. And then come September, I start 3 years probation. And then after the 3 years probation, I'm done. Stay out of trouble. So hopefully that's some content about my story to post on there, what I went through. It's been stressful. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know who to ask them to. There was nobody to turn to. My attorney, it's not that he wouldn't tell me, he didn't know. They don't specialize in inside prison questions. Taking a plea. It's a dangerous thing to do if you're going to be a medium or a pen. People look at you as a snitch. You get a 5K1. That means you're telling on somebody, trying to save your own ass. You're going to have to sit in the shoe the whole time, special housing unit, like the Hole, or solitary confinement. Child molesters everywhere, people with picture crimes against kids everywhere. It's just a different environment, seeing the fights, seeing the people that talk big and bad, and it's just a different world. It's not fun. Some people love it. That's why they go back. I don't plan on going back. So all of this stuff that I'm doing is to it educates other people, continue to educate myself. It's a daily reminder, a constant reminder of where I've been, what I've done. This is an Rdap bracelet. You can see it. Rdap. White band represents phase 3. There's 3 phases in Rdap: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. That's your phase 1 band. That's when you first start. That's your phase 2 band. That's in every 3 months you get a new band. So first 3 months you're wearing green, second 3 months you're wearing orange, last 3 months you wear white, and then when you finish, if you're still going to be there for a little while, like maybe you still got a couple weeks, a couple months left, or a couple years left, if you're going to stay in that unit, they give you a purple band, which represents that you're a comp, which you've completed Rdap. I just like the white band, so I wear the white band, and it's a reminder of where I've been. So that's my story in a nutshell. It took 38 minutes to do that. If you guys have any questions on anything, let me know. But this video is not intended really to be viewed as much as it is for the gentleman that's doing my website and the content. This is to give you some content to put some ideas down. All right, I hope this was helpful. rdapdan. Thanks, guys.